Like so many successful all-American rock bands, this underground podcast is being launched from inside a humble garage studio. Never been a better time. We are tracking sports futures and putting them to our own eye test. Welcome to the Eye Test Sports Futures Podcast. My name is Matt DeSarl. My guest today and we have a combined 82 years of experience breaking down game film. And yes, I am counting watching sports from our couch since the age of 10 as a qualifier. My guest today is a favorite coach of mine and also my biggest fan. Before I reveal who I'm talking about, let me give you a quick breakdown about the podcast. This is a spin-off of the College Basketball Eye Test blog. This year, we've enjoyed about 13,000 page visitors, people who are just huge sports fans and actually watch the games. So we are debating what they see. So if you're joining us because of the blog, I just want to thank you for your support. And if you're not a college basketball eye test reader, the concept is pretty simple for this NFL show as well. We are not going to dive into the drama of the NFL season, whether it's reading into Aaron Rodgers' psychedelic trips in the offseason or speculating how many games Deshaun Watson will miss. But what we are going to do is we're going to talk about what we're seeing in the context of watching the games. We're going to jump into some preseason NFL futures picks in just a minute, but as I mentioned, my first guest on this maiden voyage podcast is my favorite coach and my biggest fan. It's my father, Johnny D. Cutoff, and he is a lifetime, long-suffering Browns fan, which this year might provide an opportunity to watch other games in addition to his own. Without further ado, Pops, how are you doing? And what would you like the tens and tens of listeners to know about you?
I'm doing very well, and what the listeners should know about me is that I love sports as much or more than they do.
That is a true statement. So let's jump right into the NFL season. This is going to be our NFL preview show. So what have you been seeing from the preseason? Or I know you have the NFL ticket, and as much as you might say that you're locked into your beloved Cleveland Browns, I know that you get to survey the rest of the league, especially on the off days with the replays on NFL Ticket. So what have you seen during the NFL preseason here, or what are you seeing, remembering from like the late stages of last season that you might think might carry over here?
Well, as far as my Browns go, last season at the end of the year, their defense started playing very well. So that was something to kind of hang their hat on for this year coming. So I'm excited about their defense, and they got even better in the offseason. So, but the offense is a question mark with the whole Deshaun Watson deal. So that's a whole nother story. But I'm interested in what's going on in my own division more than anything, is because I see the Steelers are, I don't know, they have three quarterbacks that rival anybody on the Browns right now. It's even their play-by-play guy, Charlie Batch, is better than some of my quarterbacks. But you have, the first-round pick that they had, Kenny Pickett, and then you have the quarterback that got in trouble with, what's his name? I can't even think of his name.
Mason Rudolph,
and also Mitchell Trubisky. I watched the Steelers play the Seahawks, and they look pretty good. They have this receiver that's really, really good. His name is George Pickens, and I think he's going to be an instant star. He's kind of along the lines of just he's not as big as Chase Claypool, but he's a presence. And they have some good receivers. So they have a decent running back. They have good defense. The thing that also about my conference is the Bengals, I think, are one of the best teams in the NFL. So I think they're going to be tough to beat, once, let alone twice for the Browns. And the Ravens, I think, are on the way down. I think the league caught up to Lamar Jackson. not only by injuring him, his ankle and his knees last year, but it just seems like they solved the riddle pretty much last year. The backup, I think his name is Huntley. He actually looked pretty good. So I was hoping he was going to be around for the Browns to pick up on the scrap heap, but he's on the Ravens, and you know that makes them a decent team just because of their backup is strong. But just around the league, I'm interested in what the Broncos are going to do. Again, as a Browns fan, like they've been a stake in my heart for many, many years. So I've never really watched them with any interest, especially with John Elway up in the booth. It's hard to watch his teeth. But other than that, I'm interested to see what Russell Wilson is going to do on that team.
So let me. One of the things we're going to do on this show is kind of frame the discussion around what the current futures market is showing. And that's just, even if you're not into sports gambling, that's just a good barometer to see if a team is being overlooked or undervalued or quite the opposite. So we're talking a lot right now, obviously, about the AFC. And when you look at the AFC odds, and I had texted this to you earlier today, I kind of see there's kind of the cream of the crop. I think everyone is expecting a rematch of that awesome AFC championship game against the Bills and the Chiefs. I think that game actually wasn't technically the AFC championship game, but for all intents and purposes, it was, the best game maybe in AFC playoff history. In fact, we are premiering this podcast as the Bills are playing the Rams in the season opener. Surprisingly, the Bills go into Los Angeles as a 2.5-point favorite. So they're kind of looked at, the Bills and the Chiefs, as kind of the top dogs. I think the Bills maybe 3-1 to reach a Super Bowl, and the Chiefs maybe 6-1. So if you kind of take them to the sideline for a moment, just to look at really how competitive the AFC is itself, and you consider these teams kind of on the next tier, for odds to reach the Super Bowl, the Chargers here in the preseason, plus 750. The Broncos, you just mentioned, they're plus 850. The Ravens are 9-1. The Bengals are 11-1. And then the Colts are 12-1. Your Browns are kind of in their own little smaller buffer of a category here at 16-1. And then the odds really kind of drop down dramatically when you're talking about maybe the getting into the Dolphins and the Titans range. But let me circle back to this group here. So Chargers, Broncos, Ravens, Bengals, Colts. They're all around the same, respect level given here preseason. Who do you like there and why?
Well, I like the Bengals. Right away, I like the Bengals and the Broncos. I'm not a big believer in the Colts. I don't really understand why they're considered, because, Matty Ice is the quarterback in Indianapolis now, right?
Right. I think there's a lot of hype around Matty Ice being able to be an upgrade from what Wentz was able to do there. If you remember, he really collapsed in the last game of the season. Week 17 was supposed to be a laugher. I think they were actually an 11-point favorite in that game, and they basically had a cakewalk into the playoffs had they won in Jacksonville. And they got beat up. They actually were losing by 2 touchdowns at some point, or actually I think they were losing by 3 touchdowns at different junctures of that game. So the Colts just kind of fell flat on their face, and a lot of people blame Wentz about that. So I think there's a lot of optimism around Matty Ice coming there and being a professional quarterback who's kind of been there, done that. And obviously they have the running game with Jonathan Taylor, I should say. So I actually think the Colts might be undervalued there at 11-1 to make the Super Bowl, or 22-1 to win it all. I'm curious, why do you like the Bengals? I know how difficult it is to repeat. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit more on what you're seeing from the Bengals in your own division?
Just the combination of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I mean, they were dynamic in college, and they're doing the same thing in the pros. They made a lot of spectacular plays look very easy last year, and I just think they're going to see more of the same. Their defense is, I think it helps them that they play in the Browns division. I think the Browns might be an easy team this year for teams to beat. I hate to say that, but I just believe that. The Ravens, I think the Ravens are going to come back. And of course, the Steelers were a question mark with seeing what they're going to have at quarterback and how that's all going to gel and how quickly.
Mhm.
They always have a decent defense, but that's kind of like the way all of the AFC Central North teams are. They basically all have decent defenses, but that's where the Ravens have come back to the pack. Last year, their defense was not spectacular at all. The Browns moved the ball up and down the field on them both times they played, and it was just shocking to watch. And I just feel like that's why the Bengals are going to have like what's usually 6 very difficult games in their conference. I think they might have an easy time of it this year. And I just think they're a dynamic team. I think, the Chargers, I'm a little surprised because I think they kind of disappointed at the end of the year last year as well. Because I thought Justin Herbert was, the best thing since sliced bread last year at the beginning of the year. But do you know how when you watch games and you watch your team and you think your team's good and the team just wipes them up? And that's what the Chargers did to the Browns. And I just thought maybe the Browns were better than they were because I saw the Chargers have difficulty with teams later in the year, and I just could not believe it. They looked like a super team early in the year when they played the Browns, but I feel like they weakened as the season went along. So I'm not really buying that hype with the Chargers this year either, just because that division's gotten better. The Raiders are better, by picking up the Packers wide receiver there. I can't, think of his name right
So
now.
Devontae Adams.
Russell Wilson coming to the Broncos. They're stronger, and the Chiefs. So I feel like the flip side of the Bengals having 6 easy games, I think, the Chargers are going to have 6 difficult games in conference. So that might, make them, I don't know. But the NFC, I kind of still like the 49ers. The last few years, they've been the team that I've kind of pinned my hopes on. But they're a completely different team this year, but they still have the great defense. And that's also a tough conference, but I feel like Seattle got a little weaker. So, and the Panthers, I want to see what the Panthers do.
And then you have, the Chiefs lost the Cheetah, so he's down in Miami. But you have the Chargers also added Khalil Mack.
Right? They picked up Juju Smith, though.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch because he was really, he was a total non-factor the last, I think almost even the last 2 years. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can kind of resurrect his career, or maybe the skill was still there for him and he just, was demoralized or whatever the situation was there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think that had to do with Big Ben a lot because Big Ben was not the same guy he had been his whole career. The last few years, like last year, it got really bad. So I could see why maybe a guy like Schuster is, a little bit of a hothouse flower. You have to take good care of the guy. He has to get a lot of balls, and I think he's going to get that in Kansas City.
Yeah. As this being the mating voyage for the podcast, I need to start shopping for some sound effects to insert into the podcast here. So I need a sound effect for the Johnny D mush. I think you gave it to the Bengals when you said they're going to have an easy time through their division, and then
that's what I'm kind of hoping I'm doing.
I don't know.
It's always good to say your team doesn't look that good before the season starts instead of my normal way.
Was that a stock line for Juju right there? I wasn't sure.
What, a hothouse flower?
Hothouse flower, yeah. Can we get a definition, a podcast definition of that, of stock line?
Well, a hothouse flower is something that has to be taken care of exhaustingly, day in, day out. You have to just water them and give them enough sunlight. You have to be in a perfect hermetically sealed greenhouse. The whole bit. That's what I think. That's what a hothouse flower is to me. Something that needs a lot of attention. And I
So
think
maybe
he's going to
not
get
just
that.
a garden hose, maybe not a garden hose sound effect, but just a full blast, fire hose, and maybe some peaceful music playing in the background for that sound effect for that.
Yeah, I don't know how you're going to get the hothouse flower. This is going to be a tough one to get on a sound effect.
That's the magic of post-production. I said I'm not going to edit that, but as an editor, I think I'm probably going to, can't help myself. Well, one caveat here, as you can tell, we tend to exaggerate. I'm sure Juju Smith-Schuster can't be that much of a drama queen. Nonetheless, we will file away this stock line for a later use. You started veering there towards the NFC and talking about the 49ers. So let me set the table a little bit with kind of what the NFC picture looks like in terms of the futures market here preseason. You mentioned the Packers. They're 12-1 to win a Super Bowl. The Buccaneers are plus 750, so they're the favorite in the NFC to reach to win the Super Bowl. The Niners, they're 16-1. I would never touch the Niners at 16-1 just because you don't know what's going to happen with Trey Lance and what he's actually going to look like in a 17-game season. Cowboys are 20-1. But the group that I actually wanted to talk to you about, and this is definitely going to be a sound effect because we're going to the jungle here. It's the Lions and Giants and Bears. Oh my! You have the Lions at 60-1, Giants at 60-1, the Bears at 71, and the Panthers at 70-1, and that's just to reach a Super Bowl. So those are tantalizing odds, Clyde. What do you think of that group of four?
Well, the first three you mentioned, I don't think much of them. I think there should be even longer odds than that. But the Panthers, I think, have a shot. They're not that bad a team. They're well coached, and that coach is on the hot seat this year. So that's I'm not impressed with the Bears at all. I think they're in a lot of trouble. Justin Fields had a very tough time last year. I didn't see any growth or progress at all in his game. The Giants are borderline unwatchable. I just don't see them. At least they have three offensive linemen this year from last year, so that's a plus that they didn't have last year. And what was the other team? The Bears?
The Lions, Panthers.
Oh, the Lions.
Bears.
The Lions are. I don't know about the Lions. But
yeah, I like
70
the Lions.
To 1? I don't know.
Yeah, just to reach a Super Bowl. This is a good moment to preach moderation in your sports gambling. But last year I put a shekel or two on the Giants. I think it's similar odds. It might have been like 120-1 to win the Super Bowl or something ridiculous like that. I've kind of been waiting for. I'm a Jets fan, unfortunately, but I have a lot of Giant fans, a lot of friends who are Giant fans. And like them, I've been waiting for Danny Dimes to kind of figure it out and Saquon Barkley to get healthy. And I actually thought 2 years ago with Joe Judge, they were trending in the right direction and kind of building a program. But the last year with Joe Judge was an absolute train wreck. And the guy was just, compounding his mistakes by having just clown show press conferences after the game. So, he had to go. So they are a total question mark, but like some of the skill positions, you gotta like there. And if this is a huge if, but I mean Saquon Barkley, he can't be more than 26, 27 years old. I mean, if there's any chance he can resurrect his career, they suddenly become a dangerous team.
Yeah. What do you think about the Eagles? No.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the Eagles?
I live in between the Pittsburgh and Philadelphia market. There's a lot of excitement right now about the Eagles. I think that I think that the fans are happy Jalen Hurts is getting an opportunity here to play the first full season as the starter because he has earned that. And last year he had a spectacular first half of the season. Then in the second half of the season, they kind of leaned a lot more on the run game and developed the run game. And they had like 3 or 4 backs who can pound the ball. And they have a great offensive line. So I think they kind of formed an identity last year, and all of the reports in training camp right now are that Jalen Hurts is really looking bad. He's not able to, throw a deep ball or throw with any precision past 15 yards, which I think that he's actually like I said, he started off really hot last year. I thought he was going to be, I thought he was going to be a playoff quarterback, and I think they're capable of winning a playoff game or two this year. They made the playoffs last year, but I think they're definitely trending in the right direction. And the reason, the NFC is so wide open. You have the Buccaneers and the Packers, as what are kind of perceived to be the top teams. I would kind of poke holes at that. The Buccaneers, with Tom Brady, you have to kind of pencil them in for a playoff berth. But even the Packers, I'm not, with them losing Devontae Adams and with Aaron Rodgers drama, and I don't know that I see them as a guarantee to get in the Super Bowl or in the playoffs, or the same thing with the 49ers and the Cowboys. So that's why I think the Eagles, I'm pretty confident the Eagles can win their division or at least get one of the wild cards there. And then, the next pack of NFC teams are kind of like Vikings, Saints, Washington, and then it gets into that Giants, Panthers, Lions, Bears. And at the very bottom of what's kind of perceived to be the worst teams in the NFC are the Seahawks and the Falcons. So, the opportunity is there for, two teams to make the wild card out of the NFC. What do you think of the Saints? I think the Saints could be a playoff team this year. I was just going to
say, when you said the Saints, I was going to say the Saints are it all depends on Jameis Winston. Mm-hmm. It all depends on him because they have a decent defense. They have a lot of turnovers with that defense last few years. They're a solid defense. They play really good in New Orleans. They have the Bucks number. Didn't they beat the Bucks like 3 out of the last 4 games in regular season? So they have that in their they have that feather in their hat. So I don't know. And Jarvis Landry is one of my favorite players. He's back reunited down in LSU land. I think he might have a good comeback year. He's
That's
a
true.
dog. The guy plays hard, and there's a lot of talent on that team. And it is, like you said, the NFC is wide open to me.
I totally agree with that. I think
you could see a real surprise team in the Super Bowl out of the NFC.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like the Eagles. That, to me, the Eagles would be a surprise.
Right.
But I wouldn't go so far as to say the Commanders wouldn't do something. With Carson Wentz, Carson Wentz, they have a great defense as well, and they're well coached. So I just there's a lot of variables in the NFC.
Well,
not clear cut as the AFC to me.
With the thing that we didn't mention about the Saints, Alvin Kamara, he's in some legal trouble, but I saw his court date is like pushed back until I think it's December. For I believe there was a fight in Las Vegas on Pro Bowl weekend that he got into. So I think he may be facing assault charges. I don't know. You're gonna have to fact check the news and the court reports on your own on that one if you're listening and interested in specifics. But Alvin Kamara is I know that his court date was pushed back, so he'll be playing this year. Michael Thomas is supposedly healthy and he'll be returning this year. Like you said, Jameis Winston, he's coming into the season, recovered from his injury. And then, like you said, they've rebuilt a foundation of that team based on defense, and they've been one of the best, defenses in the league the last year. And I think this is where we're really kind of talking about watching the games. I feel like every single time I've seen the Saints play in primetime in the last 2 years, when they've had to make a stop, they have playmakers at the linebacker line, at the linebacker level, and they're able to get to the ball and make big plays. And I think that can't be like overlooked. And when you add a guy like Jarvis Landry, that's just adding to like the existing culture that you have there. And even the coach that they have is existing from that being promoted from within the organization. Jarvis Landry strikes me as a guy, he's not just playing for a paycheck. He's going to seek out a winner. Like you said, he's returning down in the bayou. I could definitely see that team, stirring up some momentum. And if the Bucks by any means, start off slow, I could see them, becoming one of the top teams in the NFC and then just kind of staying on that inside track. I actually love that pick.
Yeah. Jarvis Landry just he raises the bar in the wide receiver room. There's no doubt about it. He demanded a lot of the Browns when he first came immediately. I mean, his infusion of intensity really helps a football team. And I don't even think the Saints need that, but he rubs people the right way, Jarvis Landry, as far as I see.
Yeah, he's
a lot of Browns fans were sorry to see him go. And the ex-Jet and Brown, Demario Davis, is one of those linebackers that's an absolute monster on the Saints.
Yep. Going back to your point about Matt Rule being on the hot seat, don't you think it's a little unfair that a guy like Matt Rule would be on the hot seat? I mean, I feel like no one is given any sort of leash or any sort of leeway to, build a program. I thought, he had a good year 2 years ago in what was his rookie campaign. This past year, he had to deal with, Sam Darnold and losing Christian McCaffrey for, I think, all but 1 month of the season. I mean, cut the guy a break. I mean, I don't know. I thought the Panthers were doing pretty well with what he had been given there.
Oh, you should get the Johnny the Mush queued up there.
Hey, I don't want your money touching my money.
What's the matter?
I don't want your money in the same way.
My money's no good no more. Why?
Why? Because you're a jinx.
Because I picked Christian McCaffrey first in my draft last year.
Oh boy.
I had the first pick, and I picked Christian McCaffrey, and then I think it was week 2 he went out. It might have been the opener. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, Pop. Well, I have 2 more questions for you here. Last year, I'll put myself up. I'll expose myself here. Last year, like I said, went out on a limb. One of the 3 or 4 teams that I was really trying to find some upside in were the Giants. And you warned me. I should have taken the fatherly advice that they had no offensive line to speak of. So, who are some of the best offensive lines that you're seeing out there? Who are the worst ones? What comes to mind when you think of like offensive line play, especially, maybe rolling over from last season?
Well, my team, the Cleveland Browns, have one of the best offensive lines in the league to me. But they lost their center, which he was a rookie 2 years ago, but they have a backup center right away, so that's going to hurt them. I can't really. The Eagles are a good, solid offensive line. Jason Kelsey's probably the best center in football.
Yeah.
It always starts with a center. That's why, to me, when Alex Mack left the Falcons, that also hurt Matty Ice because Alex Mack was one of the best centers in football. And I think he might have retired now, but.
Let me cue up, according to Pro Football Focus, here are the top offensive lines going into the season. Like you said, the Eagles are number 1. We talked about their running game. The Browns are number 2. So I guess the question would be, can that sort of carry the day regardless of which quarterback are they? Which team is ranked?
I didn't know
3?
that. I didn't know statistically those 2 teams were 1 and 2. It's almost like I did my homework but I didn't.
We you know what you're talking about, and you don't give yourself enough credit. But what team? I want to see if you could pull this one out of your, what. Number 3 is going to be a surprise. Who can you name the team? This is a team that's definitely invested in the offensive line here. That's what I had hoped that my Jets would do. It's not the Jets, and Mekhi Becton is again he's not gonna play another year. But I digress. The third team here, you wanna throw out a guess here before I announce it?
It's not the Chiefs, is it?
Not the Chiefs. That's a good guess. The
well,
third
projected, the Broncos, but
it's the Detroit Lions. So again,
wow.
Going to the 60-1, 70-1 well to to make a Super Bowl, like you said, there is going to be at least 2 surprise teams in the playoffs for the NFC. I mean, when you really just kind of look at the construct of the NFC, that's really going to happen. I mean, because you have, it's very top heavy in terms of what the expectations are, and unless you're dead set on the Cowboys, and the 49ers returning to the playoffs and winning a playoff game, which I'm not, there's definitely going to be a surprise team in the mix, whereas the AFC is kind of log jammed with that middle tier of really good teams. So, you got the Lions there as the 3rd best offensive line, just talent wise, from according to Pro Football Focus headed into the season. They have Penei Sewell. They drafted him. They have a couple other draft picks from the last 2 or 3 years still on that line. The Bucks are 4th.
They still have Frank Ragnow. Is Frank Ragnow still their center? Do you know?
Yes, he is. Yep.
Okay, so he's a solid center.
Yep. Their quarterback Goff, he looked pretty decent in some of their games last year. He looked bad. I don't know. He's hit or miss. I mean, he had some atrocious games, but he did play pretty decent at times. Let me round out the top 10 here real quick. The Bucks are at 4. The Packers surprisingly at 5. Cowboys at 6. That's not a surprise. The team that we haven't talked about, and we should give some time to, the New England Patriots are at 7. Bengals, like you had said, are at 8. Chiefs 9. Colts 10. I'm surprised to see the Colts drop all the way to 10.
Chiefs, because I know the Chiefs invested a lot in the offensive line last year because he took a beating last year. The end of 2 years ago, and they had to, because they had a couple of ex-Browns on that line, and they had to get rid of both of those guys.
Well, I remember they brought over
in general,
Orlando
when the Browns cut you and you pick those guys up, in general, that's not good. You know what I mean? It's just like, wow.
That could be
Austin Riders. Austin Riders was the center for the Chiefs 2 years ago, and going into last year, he was the starter. And I don't know, it just looked like Mahomes was afraid to get the ball from him. Even he was just almost hit instantly. And then the other
maybe that could be the first. Maybe that could be the first sponsored segment. That's not good. The Browns castaway. That's not good for your offensive line.
That's a red flag. Cam Irving is the other guy. Is the other guy that the Chiefs jumped on. They the Browns dropped him and they jumped right on him, like he was going to change their world. And I believe Patrick Mahomes got a 2 or 3 week injury out of Cam Irving, like falling asleep on the job. So he's not a very good offense. I think he's out of football now. Either that or the Cowboys might have given him a boatload of money. I don't know why people give him money, but he does pretty well for himself.
I wondered 2 off seasons ago, I wondered why the Ravens gave up on Orlando Brown Jr. and they, especially with, Lamar Jackson kind of coming up and them, definitively making the choice he was going to be the guy. And you kind of wondered, what's the story there? Is he, is he not committed to his craft, or is he injured, or why would the Ravens be trading in conference to the Chiefs, their starting left tackle? And he actually played well last year at left tackle for the Chiefs. So, I was kind of surprised to see A, the trade happen, and then B, Brown kind of live up to what his original draft grade was. So the Chiefs, the Chiefs are, and that maybe that's the reason why they're,
he do a big payday? Is that why? Was he do a big payday?
Yeah, that's true. I got to look into
that. The Ravens are famously cheap. They're a lot like the Patriots. Look around the league at all the ex-Ravens that are helping other teams. It's because the Ravens didn't want to pay them.
Yeah,
and that happens a lot with the Ravens.
Lamar Jackson himself.
It might happen with Lamar
Jackson himself. Yeah,
it might.
So let's wrap it up here with the Patriots, because unfortunately we've got to spend some time on my division with the Jets. Our quarterback had an arthroscopic knee surgery just a few days from our recording this. So Zach Wilson probably is not going to start the year, and Joe Flacco probably is. That's about all the time that we need to spend on the Jets. But in that division, do you think it's really as simple as the Bills are going to have, a cakewalk here to win that division? I think people are overlooking the Patriots. I mean, I think the Patriots are going into the year maybe 4 or 5-1 to win the division, whereas you have to pay even money or maybe even a higher premium for the Bills to win that division. I mean, check me if I'm wrong, but I know the Patriots lost their offensive coordinator, but what am I missing there?
Yeah, I don't think anything's a cakewalk in the NFL. Like, you know what I mean? You can't just pencil the Bills in like 3-1 odds. You said they were 3-1, right?
No, well, yeah. To make the Super Bowl, the Bills are going into the season they're going into the Super Bowl is actually plus 270. So you put up $10 on the Bills to make the Super Bowl, you're gonna get $27. So they're plus 270 to make the Super Bowl. They're 6-1 to win the Super Bowl. So within their division, they might be minus money. You might have to, put up more money to win any money on them winning the division over the Patriots, and even the Dolphins. I mean, I think
the Dolphins are good. The Dolphins got better.
To me, it doesn't make sense to just really just kind of check the Bills as a guaranteed division winner. We all know about Mac Jones with the Patriots.
Is there any truth to the Jets looking for Jimmy Garoppolo? Or no?
That would be awesome. We'd have to do an emergency podcast if that happens. But I would
that would be great
love for that to happen. Yeah.
Because that's the kind of thing that the Jets need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because Zach Wilson's not the guy. Do you think so?
No, he's definitely not.
I'm not a believer.
He doesn't look like. Yeah, he doesn't look like he can endure. You see certain guys, and you just wonder if their bodies can endure a full season. Just the way he moves around, his pocket presence. He doesn't look like an NFL quarterback, and it's really tough to watch. And I mean, they've actually, unlike a lot of other teams across the NFL who have young quarterbacks, Jets have done a decent job investing in their offensive line. They haven't done a great job, but they have some key pieces there that remain, and I feel like he gets the support he needs, and he's just not. I mean, that rookie season was really, really the few games that he actually did play. It was rough, and there was a reason why there was a lot of enthusiasm behind a guy, Mike White coming in and winning a game for the Jets. It's because it looks so bad with Zach Wilson. But yeah, I mean, I hope that if they got Garoppolo, that would be amazing. I would love for that to happen. But, Joe Flacco, even right now, is probably realistically a better option going into the season. I just can't even believe I'm saying that. But
Jimmy Garoppolo?
No, then Zach Wilson. I'm saying the fact that Zach Wilson is injured and may miss week 1, that might result in more wins for the Jets than if he hadn't. And the Jets, I mean, they have Elijah Moore, they have the wide receiver that they got from the Titans, who had a few good years at the Titans. His name escapes me. Elijah Moore, and then they have Denzel Mims. They have Carter as a running back. They have like a lot of skilled players around Wilson, and it's like you just worry that those guys are going to be able to get the touches and get the ball in the right spot. And I saw what happened with the Bears. They lost N'Keal Harry. There was like their prized, wide receiver acquisition in the offseason. He just had ankle surgery the other day, so they had an already thin wide receiver pool. And I'm thinking, that as a Jets fan, I'm thinking like maybe we could trade some of our wide receiver assets to a team like the Bears because, unfortunately, I just don't expect, us to be able to kind of optimize that with Zach Wilson at the helm. So as bad as that sounds, I think that's kind of the reality of it. So if Garoppolo were to come to the Jets, that would be great. I mean, talking about watching teams, watching the teams play and watching them perform. I mean, Garoppolo is one of the most underrated players in the entire league, and it's not even close. I mean, he just wins. He wins. Just wins.
It doesn't
Yep.
really make sense as you're watching it, but the guy wins football games.
Yep.
And I remember coming out of college, they said his hands were small and he's going to fumble a lot, and that never happened. I mean, the guy's a winner.
Yep. Yep. Didn't really get an opportunity with the Patriots, went to the Niners, and when he wasn't injured, he's always won there. And it's kind of the same is true with Deebo Samuel. I mean, Deebo Samuel is another guy just completely overlooked and underrated, I feel like, by like the, consensus of the NFL, I feel like only just now in this latest playoff run, Deebo Samuel kind of got, the respect that he was due based on his play. But the same thing, you watch him play, he's like, he's a warrior, he yards after a catch, especially in big spots. That's a guy that you can just ride towards victory. So
definitely.
Speaking of riding towards victory, Pops, we're coming up on your bedtime, so I'm gonna.
The sand in the hourglass is running out.
Thank you so much for doing this. Do you think we can do this maybe after week 1, kind of get a reality check on how we did and do this again? Do you think this is worth your while?
Yeah, I'd love to. After week 1, I think the Browns will probably be in first place.
What do you always say about week 1?
Huh?
What do you always say about week 1? Week 1 is the 1 week you have hope.
It's the one week out of the year that I have hope. But usually by week 2, then it's gone. That's the way it's been lately. But you know that as a Jets fan, so I don't have to tell you.
Well, we have you have Jacoby Brissett and I have Joe Flacco, so our we'll be watching like the circa 2016 AFC wildcard playoff race. Like we have I don't know, I feel like it's Back to the Future with like mediocre AFC quarterbacks at the helm of our teams. So it's just it's sad that it's really just like it's the story you've seen on repeat over and over again. I can't believe I think this is why I'm actually into the NFL as a whole, like more in more recent years, is because like I've had to, like, I'm still a fan of the game. I have to find something to look forward to other than the Jets prospects for the year.
Right.
Oh my
right.
God. Oh boy.
Well, I don't ever wish an injury on somebody, but I wouldn't mind Brissett hurting his ankle and Josh Dobbs coming in. I'd love to see what Josh Dobbs can do.
Yep. Well, let's
he was
just
a backup quarterback with Steelers. He's pretty good, and I would like to see him get a shot instead of a guy that's been playing for 7-8 years with little or no results.
Well, let's end on this. Let's put it out into the universe that one of our two teams can get Jimmy Garoppolo by the end of let's say by the start of week 2. How about that? And we can do a new podcast to update all of our crazy picks and take a fresh look here at the futures and see how much they've been corrected. Actually, speaking of which, the Eagles were like 25-1 to win a Super Bowl, or 25-1 to make the Super Bowl. And the hype has been so large around them that they actually are now like 11-1 to win the Super Bowls. So the Eagles, there's actually some money being put behind the Eagles. I forgot to mention that when you asked about, how they're looking in the offseason. But
yeah, I actually just saw the Eagles play their last preseason game this weekend. They look really good.
Yeah,
and it's just, I don't know. It just,
if you can run the ball,
wide open.
If you can run the ball, it's only, it's only a 17-game season. So if you can run the ball, you have a shot, It's
I do remember every time a guy went down on that team, a back would go down on that team, another guy would just get plugged in and do the same thing.
Yep.
So, again, that's your offensive line. And I hope Garoppolo comes to the Jets because he's a good pitch man.
Yep.
He'd make it.
Yeah, they said the same thing about maybe there were rumors that he might go to the Giants. So that was
okay
before
too.
Zach.
I would love to see him in New York.
Yeah,
I would love to see him in New York.
Zach Wilson's injury. So
yeah, Zach Wilson. I mean, that guy looks like he can get hurt on the bus ride from the hotel.
Okay, Pop. Well, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me. Thanks for your wit and humor as always. I love you, and thank you to all the listeners for dealing with us on the inaugural podcast here. And we will see you in about a month or so.
Sounds good. I love you too.
All right, Pops. Here are some key quarterback updates since recording this podcast. Deshaun Watson will serve an 11-game suspension. Jets quarterback Zach Wilson will be out at least until Week 4. Jimmy Garoppolo remains with the 49ers, and Ravens star Lamar Jackson is entering the season without a contract extension. Stay tuned for at least a monthly podcast from this Sports Futures iTest channel. Thank you so much for watching and or listening.